My focus is mostly going to be on genetic evidence because that's my background. The results of our research today have the potential to deeply impact indigenous communities.
19th century explorers called Copán a lost city, proof the Maya had vanished without a trace. Yet beneath its ruined pyramid, scientists uncovered a double burial. And when they sequenced DNA that is 1,200 years old from these tombs, everything we thought we knew began to unravel. The truth revealed by genetic evidence shatters the myth of a vanished people and exposes a story far more surprising than disappearance. But what really survived when empires fell? Copán rises from the jungle as a testament to human ambition and ingenuity. Its pyramids tower above the forest floor, carved stelae stand in silent rows, and the remnants of ball courts and plazas stretch across the valley. In its prime, this city was home to nearly 19,000 people, a population rivaling many European towns of the era. Between 400 and 750 CE, Copán flourished as a center of Maya civilization, its influence reaching far beyond the stone boundaries that remain today. The scale of Copán's ruins alone challenges the old story of a people who simply vanished. Massive temples and intricate observatories point to a society deeply invested in art, science, and ceremony. The city's layout reflects careful planning, with districts for artisans, nobility, and commoners, all organized around the royal Acropolis. Inscriptions carved into stone record centuries of dynastic rule, alliances, victories, and rituals, evidence of a thriving literate culture with roots stretching back generations. Yet the very grandeur of these ruins has fed the myth of disappearance. Early explorers, awed by abandoned monuments swallowed by vines, imagined a lost world wiped clean by catastrophe or conquest. They saw emptiness where there had once been life, and assumed the story ended there. But the stones of Copán do not tell a tale of sudden extinction. Instead, they reveal the legacy of a society that reached astonishing heights before facing a long decline. Copán's position at the southern edge of the Maya world made it a crossroads for ideas and people. Trade routes brought obsidian, jade, and cacao from distant lands. Diplomats and artisans moved between Copán and other great cities like Tikal and Teotihuacan, weaving the city into a wider network that spanned Mesoamerica. The city's rulers traced their dynasty back to Kinich Yaks Kukmul, who established a royal lineage that endured for 4 centuries. Each generation added new monuments and expanded the city's reach, leaving layer upon layer of history beneath the surface. The ruins that stand today are not the remnants of a vanished people, but the visible record of a society that adapted, endured, and left its mark on the land. Copán's story is far from simple, and the mystery that once surrounded its collapse is giving way to a deeper understanding. This new view looks beyond empty plazas to the lives that continued after the last stone was set. What survived when the city's power faded would only become clear centuries later, as science began to unlock the secrets buried beneath these ancient stones. A narrow stone chamber sealed for over a millennium yielded a pair of skeletons that would puzzle even the most seasoned archaeologists. The first lay surrounded by objects of power, polished jade beads, finely painted ceramics, and obsidian blades. His skull rested on a carved stone pillow and his hands were folded across his chest, a position reserved for rulers or high nobles in classic Maya society. The tomb's location, just outside Copán's royal Acropolis, and the wealth of grave goods made his status unmistakable. Every detail suggested this man belonged to the city's ruling dynasty, a figure whose life and death were intertwined with Copán's fortunes. Ruler and dynasty are written across every artifact and placement. Beside him, the second skeleton told a different story. This man's body was positioned awkwardly, limbs askew as if placed hastily or in ritual submission. Unlike his companion, he was surrounded by only a few simple offerings. Careful study of his bones revealed signs of trauma, cuts and fractures that pointed to a violent end. The arrangement matched known patterns of sacrificial burials from other Maya sites, where victims were offered during royal funerals or major ceremonies. Here in the hush of the tomb, the contrast between the two men, one honored, one likely sacrifice, could not have been starker. Dr. Mary E. Murray, the field archaeologist leading the excavation, recalls the moment her team realized they were looking at more than just a royal interment. The proximity of the bodies, the difference in their treatment, and the evidence of ritual violence raised urgent questions. Who were these men to each other? Why would a ruler be buried alongside a sacrificial victim? Was this an act of political theater, religious devotion, or both? The mystery deepened when analysis revealed that both men shared a rare patrilineal marker, passed from father to son. Yet despite this genetic link, further investigation showed they were not close relatives, neither brothers nor father and son. The tomb seemed to capture a moment when political power, family ties, and ritual obligation collided. For the research team, the only way to untangle these relationships and understand what truly happened in this chamber was to turn to the emerging science of ancient DNA. The answers, they hoped, would be hidden in the fragments of genetic material preserved in bone and tooth waiting to be decoded in the laboratory. Inside the laboratory, ancient bone fragments from Copán arrive sealed in sterile containers, each one labeled with the code of its excavation. Technicians suit up in full-body protective gear before stepping into the clean room where even a single stray cell could contaminate the fragile samples. The focus is on the petrous portion of the temporal bone, the densest part of the human skull. Over years of trial and error, researchers learned that this small, spiral-shaped bone preserves ancient DNA far better than any other part of the skeleton, especially in the humid tropics where heat and moisture usually erase genetic traces within decades. With gloved hands, a specialist drills into the petrous bone, collecting a fine powder that holds the genetic secrets of people who lived more than 1,000 years ago. Each step follows a strict workflow, including decontamination with ultraviolet light, chemical washes to remove modern DNA, and repeated checks to ensure that nothing from the present mixes with the past. The extracted powder is then subjected to a series of chemical reactions designed to break open cell walls and release the ancient DNA within. The next phase involves building sequencing libraries, tiny collections of DNA fragments tagged with molecular barcodes. Machines amplify these fragments, sometimes working for days to generate enough material for analysis. Even then, the amount of DNA recovered from each individual is minuscule, often less than a single drop of water. Out of the original set of burials, only 7 yielded enough DNA to reconstruct full genomes, a remarkable achievement given the tropical climate's reputation for destroying genetic material. Throughout the process, every sample is tracked by number, not by name or social status. The lab team has no way of knowing which bone belonged to a ruler, a craftsman, or a sacrificial victim. The focus is on data integrity and scientific rigor. Negative controls run alongside the real samples, ensuring that any hint of contamination is caught before it can skew the results. The protocols are exacting because the stakes are high, and a single error could erase the chance to answer questions that have lingered for centuries. As the sequencers hum in the background, data begins to flow, hundreds of millions of genetic letters from people who lived and died in Copán at the height of its power and in the years of its decline. The team prepares for the next challenge, transforming these ancient codes into a story that can be read and understood not just by scientists, but by anyone seeking to know what truly happened to the Maya. Sequencing machines finish their run with a soft click, and suddenly the focus shifts from ancient bones to a digital landscape. The raw data, billions of DNA fragments, arrives as a torrent of code, each fragment tagged and logged, stripped of any clue to the person it once belonged to. The team's attention turns to the statistical pipeline, a gauntlet designed to catch every error, every stray piece of modern DNA. Quality control algorithms scan for contamination, discarding any sequence that does not fit the ancient profile. Only the cleanest reads survive this first cut. Next comes alignment. Each fragment is compared against a reference genome, slotting into place like puzzle pieces. Mismatches are flagged, gaps scrutinized. Technicians watch as the software reconstructs stretches of genetic code that have not seen daylight in over 1,000 years. The process is painstaking, with every step documented and reviewed. It is not just about finding answers, it is about ensuring that every result can stand up to the closest scrutiny. The dataset grows line by line. Across 7 individuals, the genetic code begins to take shape. Unique genomes, each one a record of ancestry, migration, and survival. But at this stage, the data is silent. No names, no stories, just strings of the letters A, T, C, and G. The pressure mounts as the team prepares the files for the final round of analysis. Every result will be checked, double-checked, and then checked again before it ever reaches publication. The stakes are high. This work will be peer-reviewed, published for the world to see in 2025, with every claim open to challenge. Dr. Shigeki Nakagome, the project lead geneticist, puts it simply: we cannot afford shortcuts. Every base pair must be earned. The anticipation is palpable. Somewhere in these sequences lies the answer to a question that has haunted Maya studies for generations. For now, the truth is locked in the data, waiting for the right key to reveal what survived, what changed, and what never disappeared. Cluster plots flicker across the screen, each point a person, ancient or modern, mapped by their DNA. The data does not care about stories, it sorts, calculates, and clusters. Yet here, in the patterns of colored dots, a new narrative takes shape. The genomes of 7 people exhumed from Copán, buried over 1,000 years ago, line up almost perfectly with those of living Maya communities spread across Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and Belize. Statistically, the match is undeniable. The so-called Copán cluster forms a tight group, its boundaries overlapping with those of both ancient populations from the late archaic Belize and modern Maya sampled from across the region. No break, no replacement, no genetic void where a civilization should be. The numbers tell the story. Identity by descent analysis reveals that these ancient Copán individuals share long stretches of DNA with millions of present-day Maya. The population bottleneck detected as a sharp reduction in genetic diversity around 1,200 years ago shows up as a dip in the data, not a cliff. Survival, not extinction, is written in the code. The statistical certainty leaves little room for doubt. The people of Copán did not vanish. Their descendants are alive, their genetic signatures woven through the bloodlines of modern Maya families. Dr. Shigeki Nakagome, the lead geneticist, summed it up after months of analysis. The genetic signature didn't disappear, it's still here, walking among us today. The myth of the vanished Maya collapses under the weight of this evidence. Cluster plots and probability scores replace speculation and legend. The ancient and the living are joined not by myth, but by measurable, testable continuity. This revelation does not just rewrite a chapter of Maya history, it erases an entire narrative built on absence. The data confirms what Maya communities have always claimed: their roots run deep and unbroken by collapse or conquest. The story moves from mystery to resilience, from disappearance to survival. The myth is gone, replaced by a legacy that endures in every modern Maya community, their ancestry mapped and confirmed by the science of ancient DNA. Across the highlands and lowlands of Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and Belize, millions of Maya people go about their daily lives, raising families, tending fields, teaching children, and keeping alive living languages and traditions shaped by centuries of endurance. For generations, these communities have carried stories of their ancestors, tracing their roots to the ancient cities whose ruins still rise from the jungle. Yet for much of the modern era, their claims to this heritage were dismissed as legend or overshadowed by the myth of a vanished civilization. Now the science of ancient DNA has caught up to what Maya people have always known. Their connection to the past is unbroken, inscribed not just in memory or custom, but in the very code of life. The discovery of genetic continuity between Copán's ancient inhabitants and today's Maya is more than a scientific milestone. It is a validation of identity. The results confirm that the people who built Copán, who survived its collapse and adapted to new realities, are the direct ancestors of those living in the region now. This is not just a matter of shared ancestry on a genetic chart, it is a living bond that strengthens calls for recognition, respect, and the right to define their own story. For Maya communities, this evidence arrives as both vindication and empowerment. It affirms their place as stewards of a heritage stretching back over 1,000 years, and it supports their claims to ancestral lands, languages, and cultural practices that have survived despite centuries of upheaval. The process of uncovering and sharing these findings has also changed the way science interacts with indigenous communities. Researchers consulted with Maya leaders and local authorities before removing remains or publishing results. Ethical guidelines now require that descendant communities have a say in how their ancestors are studied and represented. This collaboration ensures that the benefits of discovery flow both ways. Science gains from the insight and wisdom of living communities, while Maya people gain new tools to defend their rights and tell their own histories. For many, learning that their DNA carries the signatures of Copán's builders is a source of pride and renewed purpose. It means that the story of the Maya is not frozen in stone or buried in the earth. It is alive, evolving, and very much present. The ancient past is not a distant mystery, but a foundation for the future. The living Maya are not relics of a lost world, they are its guardians, carrying forward the knowledge, resilience, and creativity that allowed their ancestors to endure. In the face of centuries of erasure, both cultural and physical, the DNA evidence stands as a powerful reminder the Maya never disappeared. Their voice, their memory, and their lineage persist, shaping the world today. Inside the Copán genomes, a striking pattern emerges. Each of the 7 ancient individuals carries a different maternal lineage. Mitochondrial DNA, passed from mother to child, reveals a tapestry of ancestry, with haplogroups A2 and C1, both widespread across the Americas, appearing alongside rarer lineages. This diversity of maternal lines, found even within the city's elite burials, points to a society built on wide-reaching kinship networks rather than closed dynastic circles. Dr. Mary E. Murray describes the city as a living crossroads. She notes the material culture shows it, and the DNA confirms that women came from many backgrounds, local and distant, to become part of Copán's story. The genetic evidence does not stop with mothers. When researchers modeled the ancestry of Copán's ancient inhabitants, they found a subtle but persistent signal. About 6% of the genome traces back to highland Mexico. This is not the genetic footprint of conquest or mass migration. Instead, it suggests that Copán's ruling families forged alliances with outsiders, likely through marriage, diplomacy, and selective migration. The city's founder, Kinich Yaks Kuk Mo, is remembered in inscriptions as an outsider who arrived from the West. The DNA now shows that his arrival was not an isolated event, but part of a broader pattern, foreign lineages entering Copán at the highest levels, blending with local bloodlines and leaving a genetic legacy that endures. Admixture modeling reveals that this highland Mexican ancestry entered Copán before and during its period of greatest power, beginning in the 5th century CE. The proportion, about 6%, remained stable through centuries of dynastic rule, suggesting that elite families maintain these external connections across generations. Rather than overwhelming the local population, foreign ancestry was woven into the fabric of Copán's society, concentrated in the upper echelons but also visible in commoner burials. This pattern matches what archaeologists see in the city's neighborhoods, where imported pottery, obsidian, and ritual objects from distant regions appear alongside local traditions. The result is a portrait of Copán as a cosmopolitan city, one where families from different backgrounds intermarried, shared power, and built new identities together. The genetic diversity among mothers, paired with the selective introduction of foreign paternal lines, points to a society that valued alliance and adaptability. These findings humanize the ancient Maya, revealing a community shaped by movement, exchange, and the constant negotiation of identity. The city's strength came from its openness, its ability to draw people in and make them part of something larger. Even as Copán's fortunes rose and fell, the legacy of many mothers and foreign fathers persisted, encoded in the DNA of those who called the city home. A sharp contraction in Copán's population, visible in both the ruins and the genomes, left its imprint on the city and its descendants. Around 1,200 years ago, the genetic record shows a pronounced bottleneck, a sudden drop in the number of people contributing to future generations. Dr. Shigeki Nakagome describes it as a narrowing of the family tree, not a severing. The DNA from 7 ancient burials, compared through identity by descent analysis, reveals long blocks of genetic material shared among survivors and their living relatives, but with far less diversity than before. This is not a vanishing act, it is a population squeezed by forces that left fewer branches for the future to grow from. The archaeological record mirrors this contraction. After centuries of steady construction, the pace of building in Copán slowed dramatically by the late 8th century. Fewer monuments rose to honor the dead or celebrate new rulers. The city's great plazas, once crowded with stelae and altars, saw their last major works completed as resources and labor dwindled. The final generations of Copán's dynasty could no longer marshal the people needed to carve their legacy in stone. Instead, half-finished projects and abandoned quarries speak to a city running out of time and strength. Within the DNA, the story is just as stark. The bottleneck is visible as a drop in genetic heterozygosity, fewer differences between individuals, more long stretches of identical DNA. This pattern, which scientists trace to around 800 CE, means that only a fraction of Copán's once diverse population survived to pass on their genes. The rest either left, succumbed to crisis, or saw their family lines end. The genetic echo of this crash persists in the genomes of millions of modern Maya, a signature of survival through adversity rather than disappearance. For the city's elite, the consequences were immediate and devastating. Dynastic authority depended on numbers, on the ability to rally followers, organize labor, and perform elaborate rituals that legitimized power. As the population shrank, so did the reach of the ruling families. Political networks built on kinship and alliance began to unravel. Fewer people meant fewer marriages, fewer heirs, and fewer supporters to maintain the intricate web of obligations that had held Copán together for centuries. The loss of population was not just a matter of empty houses or overgrown fields. It was a loss of resilience, a vulnerability exposed. With every death, every family that moved away, the city's ability to weather new challenges weakened. The bottleneck set the stage for what came next: environmental shocks, resource scarcity, and the unraveling of a political order that had once seemed unshakable. In the DNA and the stones, the evidence is clear. The collapse of Copán was not a mystery but a process written in the shrinking circles of its people. Rainfall once defined the rhythm of life in Copán. For centuries, the city's farmers relied on the predictable arrival of wet seasons to fill the rivers, flood the fields, and sustain the people. But in the decades after 750 CE, the sky began to change. Paleoclimate records drawn from lake sediments, cave formations, and distant marine cores trace a pattern of declining rainfall across the Maya lowlands. Stalagmites from deep within Yucatan caves preserve layers of calcite that thicken in wet years and shrink in drought. These silent archives reveal that during Copán's collapse, rainfall dropped sharply, sometimes for years at a stretch. Lake cores from across the region tell a similar story. Sediment layers grow darker and denser as water levels fall, signaling periods when crops would have withered and reservoirs ran dry. The evidence points to a series of multi-year droughts, some lasting 5 years or more, striking precisely as Copán's construction slowed and its plazas emptied. Archaeologists have found traces of failed harvests in the soil, thin bands of ash and charcoal, remnants of desperate attempts to clear more land for maize as yields declined. The city's population, already weakened by internal pressures, faced a new threat as food became scarce. Water collection systems, once a marvel of engineering, could not keep up with the relentless dry seasons. Famine and malnutrition left their mark on the bones of the dead, with stunted growth in children, lesions from vitamin deficiencies, and signs of disease that thrive when bodies are weakened by hunger. Drought did not act alone, but it struck at the heart of Copán's ability to endure crisis. The genetic bottleneck visible in ancient DNA, those long, identical stretches of code, mirrors the environmental bottleneck above ground. Fewer people survive to pass on their genes, just as fewer families remain to tend the fields. The collapse of Copán was not the work of a single disaster, but the slow, grinding pressure of a sky that withheld its promise of rain. Research on ancient Maya DNA is only beginning to reveal what is possible. For the scientists involved, the work at Copán is a starting point, not a final answer. 7 genomes can illuminate broad patterns, but the story of the Maya is written in millions of lives, past and present. The call now is for expanded datasets, more ancient individuals from different Maya cities, more modern samples from diverse communities, and more collaboration across national boundaries. Every new genome sequenced adds detail to the picture, helping to untangle the movements, marriages, and migrations that shaped the Maya world over centuries. But there is a growing recognition that the future of this research depends on partnership. The days when scientists could collect bones and data without local involvement are over. The Copán project set a new standard by working closely with Maya communities and Honduran authorities from the outset. Decisions about which remains to sample, how to interpret results, and how to share findings now involve community leaders and local experts. This collaborative model is not just ethical, it is essential. It ensures that discoveries benefit everyone, not just academic institutions, and that the people who are most connected to this history have a voice in how it is told. There are also technical frontiers ahead. Ancient DNA techniques are improving rapidly, allowing scientists to recover usable genetic material from ever older and more fragile remains, even in the humid tropics where preservation is a constant challenge. As methods advance, it will become possible to compare Copán's genetic legacy with that of other great Maya centers, like Tikal, Caracol, and Calakmul, tracing regional differences and connections in unprecedented detail. Integrating genetic data with archaeological, linguistic, and oral histories promises a fuller, richer understanding of the Maya past. For the research team, the work is as much about responsibility as discovery. Every step from sampling to sequencing to publication carries the weight of history and the trust of living communities. The hope is that by working together, scientists and Maya descendants can continue to rewrite and reclaim the story of one of the world's most enduring civilizations. Today, over 7 million Maya live across Mexico and Central America, carrying the same genetic signatures as their Copán ancestors. Science now confirms what Maya communities have always known: survival, not disappearance, defines their story. As climate and political instability threaten societies worldwide, the Maya remind us that collapse erases empires, not people. Their resilience is the real inheritance. What will future generations say we chose to remember? Share your thoughts below.